Yo, what up? Welcome back. It's been a little bit, few days. I don't remember last time I was on here. Maybe Friday. What's today? Today Wednesday. Today Thursday. Shit. I really don't be on my days, but it's been a while. So it's been about a week since I was last on here, but I had a lot to do. Was on the road a little bit, doing little things of this, doing little things of that. Continuing to pretty much, fix little issues with my SaaS app, which just launched, by the way, as you can see in that top, I don't know if that's right or left, y'all, top corner, the URL, if you want to go ahead and check that out. But it's live. People are actually using it. I'm using it currently for a couple client projects that I am working on right now. So just continuing to do that and build that out, and, gonna have to do a lot of marketing and outreach and stuff to, really kind of get it out there. But so far so good. Got that up there, like I said. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Other than that, been on the road. Now I'm back working on a couple other things. Like I said, I have a couple of client projects that I've been working on. I actually might do one of those live. They don't really care, so I'm actually do that live probably sometime this week. Other than that, I'm back to working on the other application that I've had and put out, and that is actually live and people are using. It is a kind of social network, social platform. I don't even really want to call it network, but it's a social platform for kind of creatives to connect and showcase the work, and kind of like make their own kind of portfolio, and something that is invitation only called Collective. So I'm kind of hopping back onto that one, and I'm going to start, finishing some things off that I had lined up for myself that I never got around to, because the past month and a half has strictly been about getting that SaaS application out, because hopefully that's the one that's going to create some, MRR for me and allow me to kind of do some other things that I want to do. So getting back to it right now. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop into it. Like I said, it's been a while. So like one thing about when you kind of like step away from a code base, like I have for the last like 6 weeks or so, you kind of got to refresh. I'll be like, damn, what did I do? What did I leave off? Like what needs to be done? Okay, all right. So like kind of digging back into here and kind of viewing things again with a almost a fresh eye takes a little bit. But I kind of started to remember where I left off, and one of the last things I wanted to implement for this was a kind of bulk newsletter type of deal. How like platforms will send you a um an email with either promotional stuff or new features or whatever. Just kind of like that setup is what I've been kind of working on. I have actually done this already for one of my other applications, but this one I'm deciding to do a little bit different way. I'm also using Postmark for this application as well. My previous setup with Postmark was basically all through webhooks, where you would create a template, you create a message on Postmark, and then webhook would communicate to the app to kind of pull in the emails and list of people that it needs to send out as your mailing list, so to speak, and doing it that way. But now I'm trying to make it a UI friendly mailing. So basically, without leaving the application itself, I can go in there and create these mass bulk emails and send them out directly from the app instead of having to go through Postmark and handle all the communications back and forth on when people subscribe or unsubscribe or whatnot. I'm trying to handle this all in app because I already have it pretty much set up for a lot of my other email stuff, fully wired. So I decided to just kind of tap back into that. So I'm trying to figure that out. Definitely a very different approach. I don't know if it's better or easier, but we'll find out as I kind of continue to test and build this out. Pretty much I've gotten most of it done already. The core skeletons and everything I needed scaffolded. I did that yesterday, and today's kind of just testing and tweaking and getting it to work and look exactly as I want. So let's come in here. Yeah, so as you can see, my email purposes, I already had all of these set up because I had a bunch of different, let me go fix that. I had a bunch of different emails that would send out when when a user created an account. Basically, they would automatically get sent tips and tricks, activity digest, unread messages, and all these, and they can go ahead and subscribe or unsubscribe as they want. I think it's been a while since I looked at those. Let me go. So yeah, so I had a bunch of these right here of different cases that would send, and I had already set up that it would send on a kind of like different staggered release schedule based on days and whatnot. And then I have my it's my email preview. Let's go. All right, so here is the full file. I'm probably gonna have to break this up, but these are all my HTML generators for actual emails that are being sent. And then I have all my actual functions. Bookmark there. My actual functions to send the actual emails with it in. So I had already had all this wired up completely, and this was a lot. I'm probably gonna have to break some of this up into different components, but I will do that later. So now basically I'm adding another email to this, and it's going to be a bulk email kind of setup. And let's see. don't know why these are not in my test files. All right, some of them are those, but here is my actual newsletter campaigns. All right, so that's what I'm doing. So how I set this up is from my dashboard, I'm going to be able to actually create campaigns, which will allow me to actually track a lot of things like email opens, who I sent it to, how many people bounced, how many people complained, like basically how you would have in a separate like MailChimp or kind of mailing thing. I needed to do a very kind of like limited version of that will give me the core statistics and analytics that I need. As you can see, where is it? Status, tag, there's another one. All right, failure reason, completed estimate. So basically basic statistics that I'm going to need from these actual bulk emails and campaigns. But instead of having to use an external mailer like MailChimp or Aweber or HubSpot or any of those that other people use for like marketing materials, I wanted to utilize Postmark, which I'm already paying for, and use it to bulk email. But instead I need some sort of control in terms of campaigns and understanding what gets sent, why it doesn't go through, who unsubscribed, who subscribed, and all that. So basically I created 2 separate tables within my schema that will allow me to not only collect information about the recipients of those campaigns, but also the actual campaigns themselves and get all the information I need. I'm gonna have to try change some of this, but storing my HTML, storing text body, all that stuff that you would have to do that you wouldn't necessarily see if you were using a third-party kind of mailer. I needed to do a very kind of like small variation of that, and this is kind of the way I figured out how I would do it, and instead create my own tables to actually store that information and then create some APIs to actually send it from. Where am I? All right, so here's my payload. Let's fix this. Oh, it's not string anymore. All right, so here's my payload, and this is what I'm expecting for my schema. And then API loader, obviously some regards here. Grab the campaign, and you're gonna list those campaigns. That's gonna be on the actual UI side, but then to actually rate is here. I'm gonna safe parse it. And then you're actually try to create those newsletter campaigns with the payload and who you're sending it to. And because like Postmark has a limit on how many you can send at a time, I had to, let's see, I had to basically send them in chunks. And I think my max is set to like 4,500 at a time. So it's going to kind of loop through all those and send them. Let's see if I can walk through this. All right, so yeah, here's my newsletter campaigns file, handling the actual campaign creation and sending. This is my audience, basically just getting my user information from my tables, and this is the type that I'm expecting it to be. Same with the recipient, get their name, and then you're gonna load those audience users, basically grabbing all of these from my DB. Instead of having a mailing list, I'm using my database as my mailing list, and I have a boolean basically of their email preferences if they agree, basically, as you can see right here. If they are opted in, which I'm gonna have to come here and auto opt. If they're opted in, basically grab those users from my table, and then per user eligibility filter, basically this is how I'm going to determine who should be sent. If it's false, then you skip those, basically opted out, skipped, missing email, not verified, banned, all that good stuff too. And then here's the actual chunk that I'm sending. So I'm going to chunk these, and for each one, I'm going to basically push it to an array. And then same batch limits, launch controls. Here's batch limits. As you can see, max recipients I'm sending, I said 45, but that's the bytes I'm going to be sending the max, and then I'm only going to be sending to 500 recipients at a time, basically. But the max allowed is batch recipients is 5,000, which is I think Postmark's limit on their kind of broadcast emails. All right, so streams. A lot of my streams should just be broadcast. Okay, creating a new set from that. Loud streams, not streams. Where is it? I got my from email. It's my if requested from. It's payload that from. All right, so I'm probably gonna change that because it needs to be a default requested from. All right, this is just UI stuff. Then I'm actually determining how many bytes those messages are going to be that I'm going to be sending. Keep chunk intermittent. Okay. And then here is chunk newsletter recipients by payload. So for each recipient, basically, I'm going to be sending that email out to, and for each batch, you can push out to that current batch. It's going to be about 500 at a time. And then here's the actual create action for my newsletter campaigns, which is just going to be an email. And then all right, and then here's my actual workers to send it. And then same, I have it set up for my subscribe, which I had to create a separate this is actually kind of interesting how I did this. So I had to basically create a signed token because my unsubscribe URL shouldn't require users to be signed in. I had to create a public route, and then to make sure that they're actually, authorized to unsubscribe, I had to create a kind of signed token using this HMAC, and then I'm going to use the timing to compare the times to each other to make sure they're correct. And okay, so here's a payload. Where is it? Basically, it's gonna live for 30 days. Then I'm going to use a base 64 URL so that tokens can be passed in my query params. It's basically how I'm going to grab this signed token and determine if it is correct. All right, here it is. So I'm going to sign it with this HMAC SHA 256 using a server only secret, which is set as an environment. So this is a unique token in my environment set to basically what you define in your environment, and then you're basically compare, and you're gonna set it to the HMAC and the SHA. 56 is gonna assign to the token, and you're gonna compare that to make sure, with high probability that this is a authorized action being taken, basically for somebody that's not signed in. Here's payload, user ID, email, purpose, newsletter, unsubscribe, and here's the date. You're going to encode that payload to a base 64. Then you're going to create that signature. And then to verify, basically, you're going to compare that to what you're expected to what the actual signature is. So typically what happens, especially when you use something better off, is it does stuff, all that basically behind the scenes, especially with like invitations. But because this is a custom build, I had to kind of wire all that up myself. All right, so all the backend looks pretty good. I let the agents basically kind of put the whole front end on its own. I'm probably gonna have to go in there and change a bunch of things. I just wanted to see it and get a look and see what kind of baseline it came up with. It typically does a pretty good job of skeletoning things out. I know I'm gonna have to go in there and change things to make it more intuitive, but let's just check it out, see what it did. All right, so it comes dashboard, it comes newsletter. So this is what it is. So this is basically, this right here is where I'm going to be actually creating my newsletter campaigns. It allows for dry runs, basically test runs without actually sending it to, and I can actually preview the entire audience that would be receiving it. So far it looks decent. Subject from, so these should just basically be default, so I'm probably gonna remove those. We'll see. So I need to create a template instead of coming here and having to hardwire my HTML every single time for my actual emails that are being sent. I'm going to reuse the templates that I've already created for a bunch of my other ones. Let's see, where am I? Admin created. So basically it's going to be all similar to this. I might need to create an editor, or bring one in as a package that will allow me to kind of like insert images and control the text in bold, italics, links, and all that. That'll get inserted into the center portion of the email, and then just use my existing templates as the skeleton. So I'm probably going to end up having to do that. Text body is fine. Basically this is a fallback for email writers that don't render HTML. That's fine. Being able to kind of define that is pretty cool. ID shouldn't necessarily, yeah. So my ID should just auto be assigned. I don't think I need an alias. This shouldn't have to be changed. Tag is fine. Some of this stuff should just automatically be created. So I'm gonna have to come in here. I do like being able to optionally basically single out specific users that you want to send an email to, which is cool. Track opens, include unverified emails. All right, these are options. Let's just here. It should be from all right, come here. Footer. Think dev/emails. All right, so let's check this. Creator. All right, so basically this is my template for a lot of the emails that get sent from Collective, already being used and sent out. So basically I'm going to need to create an HTML editor that will allow me to kind of choose the text that is getting sent out and maybe add some images. So I need to figure out a way that I want to do that, but this is generally how all my emails look currently. And I'm going to have to find a way to kind of utilize the same thing over for my bulk emails while still allowing me to kind of customize that. And I want to do it in the UI. I don't want to do this in the HTML every single time. So let's copy this HTML. Why not? Let's not do that. So let me create some dummy text. Grab this, put that in the text of the body. All right, yes, tag. There's no links to track. Let's do drawing. Let's go preview audience. All right, cool. So preview audience works because I should have only like 27 users, I believe. Yeah, 27 users. Let's come here again. Create that tag. Try run preview. All right, so 27 is the audience. Eligible is 22. 5 are skipped. And then max recipients is 500. So basically it's going to send out 500 at a time. Sender, hello, stream, broadcast. All right, so it looks pretty good in terms of understanding exactly who it should be sending to. Skip to 5, but I'm not necessarily sure why. I kind of do know why though. Because he's not opted in. Let's go. Yeah, so he's not opted in. There's probably 5 users currently not opted in automatically. Skipped 5. Let's dry run this. Dry run campaign created. So this is just a test campaign. Status draft, recipients 22. Created. All right, cool. So this is exactly what I'm gonna look for. So here's the campaign details of this dry run of this campaign that I just created. Status draft, recipients, and created. And as you can see, I have 22 queued. And then here's the reasons why, which I like that. So it tells me exactly why those recipients weren't sent out of my users, and most reason is just email not verified and then newsletter opt out. Status skipped, failed, skipped, 0 cent because it's just queued. All right, so I like that. Postmark request skipped. There's those shifts for some reason. All right, let's see if this actually gets sent. Let's try to create this campaign. So it's created and it's queued. So my worker should come here, see that something is queued, and then send out those 22 test emails to the users on my local machine. Not seeing it. Just let it create campaign. Let's go to my enqueued. All right, so enqueue the ad. So here's your campaign, enqueue campaign, campaign ID. Here's the actual worker job. Move on complete and then move on fail. Enqueue newsletter campaign submission. Cool. Status sync. Oh wait, email queue to add. So there's the polling that should be happening. Enqueue newsletter campaign finalized. Enqueue to add. And then function to postmark from. Grab that from email. Submit newsletter campaign. Then this is what should be happening right now. Enqueues. Load queued recipients. Split safe. Enqueue recipient patch. All right, so db.update my newsletter campaign sets that as failed. Otherwise, that's if that environment isn't set, which it is. Otherwise, select from newsletter campaigns with that campaign ID. Then find those recipients. All right, base payload type. Grab the, basically determine the actual size to make sure you're not over limit. Then you're going to chunk that newsletter by, chunk all those emails by payload size, basically. And then set status to sending. Then you're going to loop through batches, then loop through them batches. Send batch, and you're going to send. So here's my logger. It should be happening. Not seeing anything. Newsletter, campaign matches and queued. Okay. Got the API token, and you're supposed to be sending this. I don't really know why it's not sending. All right, let's examine this. Let's refresh. Still queued, and it's not sending. All right, let's check my DB. All right, so here's my campaign. Queued, still queued, and it should be sending completed failed or something. And here's the actual recipients. So it grabbed all the recipients appropriately, and it actually queued it in my DB, but my worker is not sending it from my DB. So let's figure out what's going on there. Campaign, let's check my postmark. All right, postmark is clean, so let me check this. All right, just gonna take a look at that. So it's getting queued properly. Grabbing all the information appropriately. It's just never actually sending. So there's something with my workers, probably. Check my Docker and make sure it's. All right, so my Redis is working. Postgres. It's interesting. Got no errors. All right, so somewhere along the way, it's not actually firing the emails. All right, why is that not? Let's see what I did. So I added to my worker. Newsletter poll. Added a poll attempt. Number, sync newsletter campaign status. Let's see. Interesting. All right, so it says I found that queue jobs were being created, but polling could stall due to boolean queue job deduplication. Poll retry jobs. Reuse the same job ID each time. All right, so here's my job ID of my namespace job ID, which is, let's see where it is. It's been a while since I've been in here. All right, so for my Redis server, which handles all my polling jobs and everything, I have a namespace job ID function. My namespace safe job ID, basically so it doesn't keep running the same jobs over and over again. And it is, so basically it's calling the same ID, camp ID. I don't know why, camp ID, batch ID, bulk request ID. Apparently it says a poll attempt number. Remove incomplete age retention, boolean queue keeps completed jobs for a while, so re-adding the same job ID is ignored. First poll runs, then further polls may never schedule, and campaigns can appear stuck in sending such. So it's saying multiple polls weren't running, but I feel like it didn't even run my first poll. Let's see. So basically, it's just, I don't know if that's going to work. Basically just added a poll attempt, which is going to increase by 1 for every single time it retries the job, which makes each reattempt unique for another, so it doesn't get ignored by my boolean queue kind of setup, which makes sense, but I don't understand why it's not firing the first time. As you can see, poll attempt +1. You're going to queue my newsletter campaign status. If status equals acceptance, status equals processing. Re-queue another status check for this batch, which is not necessarily working. And then you're passing the poll attempt to my worker. New campaign should now continue polling until Postmark reaches terminal status and then finalize. Safe admin action to resume polling for. All right, let's try this. Add. Let's try that, and then let's do this. Let's go here. I'm gonna restart my Docker, which should stop my Redis server, and then start it up again. Give me a fresh restart, and then let's start up my server. All right, so created a resume newsletter campaign polling action campaign select status postmark bulk request ID from newsletter campaigns and then queued recipients from campaign ID and recipient status equals queued. Okay, constant recipient IDs. You're gonna loop through each one. You're gonna enqueue those, and you're actually gonna try to send those. Let's see, turn, and then actually create an action if intent equals resume polling, resume newsletter campaign polling function with that campaign ID, resumed polling. Then it should be a button. Resume polling. I don't know if that's gonna work. Let's see, because I feel like it's not even communicating to my actual postmark. See, knew it. Campaign has no postmark bulk request ID to resume polling. All right, that seems to be the main issue. No postmark bulk request ID. So it's not communicating my postmark. So let me try this one more time. Again, some more copy. Created and queued. Still queued. And I come here, go to resume. Same, no postmark bulk ID. All right, so I think that's the real issue. Postmark bulk request ID is not being attached. All right. All right, let's see. Post. Should be. That's for resume. Need. All right, it's not setting my ID for whatever reason. Parsed that ID update. All right, it's not sending. JSON response parsed response text, but there is no API postmark app / email / bulk method post. Yeah, this is the problem. That is the issue. So it's trying to communicate to my postmark API, and it's not happening, and it's not getting a response back, which would attach a postmark bulk request ID to it. So it would tell postmark to go ahead and send those out. So I think that's what's happening. And polling only works if the ID exists. So resume polling is wrong. 2 exceptions. right. Let's see. Um, Smart. All right, so it is saying here's my post email/bulk. That's correct. API postmark dot slash email/bulk, which is correct. And sending. All right, let me. I know my API is correct because my other emails send, appropriately, but that is just regular transactional emails. Never done it this way with bulk emails. I got to figure out what is the trick here. What am I missing? Recipients weren't skipped, and if a match failed, ID also stays empty. Worker is running. It should be running. Worker logs for newsletter and queue campaign. I don't see any logs. Let's come here. All right, so I'm not seeing any logs. All right, so my Redis server is functioning. All right, let's post this. All right. Oh. The networking. Phoenix TSX. Let's figure this out. All right, so basically what's saying is my worker is not actually running, which is kind of weird to me. All right, let's npx tsx app/worker.ps. All right, here we go. Starting email worker processing newsletter enqueue campaign batches enqueued. All right, so here's my actual campaign. Here's the job. Newsletter batch submit failed. And why did it fail? This endpoint requires approval to access. Contact support. Oh, okay. All right, so seems like I don't know why I should have support already, because I already use it on my other app, so I don't really know why it's not firing. Let me see what they say. Let me go ahead and contact them real quick. Oh, actually, I know why it works on the one, because another one I use Postmark for, but I actually send it from Postmark and I just use webhooks to actually communicate. But this one, I'm actually using their endpoint to send it directly from my app. And apparently I need to get special approval for that. So something I did not know. All right, because if I come here again, let's say, the hell is this so big? All right, so here we go. So actually, it did finally fire, and it gave me a failed response, which is a response is a response. So it actually is trying to communicate to my API endpoint on Post Markdown. So that's actually working correctly. And then here's the error, failed. And all right, so I need to fix this. Let's fix this right now. While I wait for a response, let's go. Okay, let's see. Table. All right, why is it not working? I don't know why it's not working. Mm-mm. All right, so all right, that's weird. So I don't really know what's going on here. Something with my card for sure. Should not be pushing this wider, but it is. All right, let's come here. Table with full max of full flex. I don't know. All right, so it seems like this might have to be an issue that hopefully I can get finished next time because I need actual approval from Postmarks. That's something I didn't know. Webhooks completely fine to kind of send bulk emails from, but apparently if you want to communicate directly with Postmarks kind of API and its endpoint to send those bulk emails, which I'm trying to set up from my kind of UI front and not have to send everything from Postmark, which is kind of clunky to do. It apparently needs, approval for them. So I sent a ticket to them, and I don't know how long it's going to take for them to get back to me. Hopefully it's just a kind of quick flip of a switch on their end. And then I will be able to communicate directly to kind of the backend API and kind of test that out and make sure things are working properly. But as of right now, I am still gonna continue to get this failure, and I cannot change it on my end. So hopefully I get that response pretty quickly, and I'll be able to come in here and actually finish this kind of feature off. I got a pretty close to it being done. I would need to clean up a bunch of this stuff here. No need all this. Some of this needs to be automatically set, and I need to kind of come up with an editor. I might actually do that. Let me see if I can do that. All right, I'm still seeing overflow. I think it has to do with the table row itself. All right, so I think what's happening is, because these table rows don't have a width set, they just continually push this out further and further. And Shatsian has these weird things with their cards where they don't always respect overflows and card widths and all that. And instead of, appropriately breaking this here, it oh, got fixed. Instead of abruptly breaking that here, as you see happen now, it just continually got wider and wider, which kind of broke the viewport. So yeah, so it put width, an actual setting of width, and broke words. So now it doesn't continually push that card out, but that doesn't really look good either. No, it doesn't necessarily look good. So that is, I don't really like that. Let's do, let's change those. All right, so let's maybe make you, all right, that looks better. Maybe push out a little bit and all right, table body, let's go class. All right, tables are very annoying in Chetzian, I'm not gonna lie. All right, let's do this. Horizontal scroll if the table is long without. All right, see if I can fix that. This is very annoying. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so it kind of did what I wanted to. So horizontal scroll appropriately. Minimal hit width on the tables, but it pushes the card wider, which is a SHADCN bug. The minimum width. I think it needs to be minimum width 0. Cool. It's one of these. The card is still pushed. That's very annoying. It should be, but it's not. All right. I don't really know how to fix this. Yeah, because that ain't gonna work. I might need to look at my other code because I actually did this for my other application. I just forget how I fixed that issue. Why is this pushing wider than the layout? Let's check. Minimum width 0, max width full. All right, let's see what it did. All right, so actual admin layout, it added a minimum width 0. All right, that's weird. Weird thing about Shadowsea and components, and especially cards, is a lot of times you have to add minimum width 0 to a lot of them. Especially when you like make sure it stays within a container and doesn't break out. It does this weird thing where it constantly breaks out of things, especially when it gets pushed wider by things like tables. And instead of, you know, respecting your overflows and stuff, I don't know why you need to add a minimum 0 to everything, but you kind of do. Typically I kind of go in here and actually add it directly to my card components. That typically solves a lot of those kind of weird overflow issues that you get with Shadowsea. I don't really know why it is there, but it's definitely there. All right, but that fixed it. So now the table appropriately is overflowed horizontally. Doesn't break out of the container and push the screen wider. And if I go on my mobile screens, that'll be fixed. Maybe fix that. But as you can see, scroll is working appropriately. And let's go and check my tablets. Where is it? iPhone. Here. All right, cool. So that works appropriately. And now, all right, let's come here and clean this up. So it should be 70. And 70, I believe. So it should be 32, 45, 25, 55. Clean these up. $90. All right, zoom here, refresh. Cool. Now if I click this, it works properly. All right, cool. All right, one thing. Let me check my right, by default, newsletter should be set to true, so that works. And then if I come here, go to settings, make sure this works. You know, preferences updated. So now it should be 23 users queued. So if I come to my dashboard, newsletter, just make this a dry run. Come here, text body. On that preview audience. All right, so that does work appropriately. It does actually set that preference. Now I'm eligible at 23, skipping 4, audience 27. So if I come here again and I turn this off, let's come back here. Same thing. Go to preview. 22. All right, so settings is working properly, and let's come here. Let's clean up this form. I don't think all this needs to be in here. Do need a subject. All right, so all right, so it should be from all right, so default from is my environment variable set, which should be good. I'm not gonna show my MV, but let me check my V. Cool. All right, so that's set properly, so I can get rid of my from email and reply to email. All right, by default, my so set from the all right, so that should be automatic set. Mm. All right, so basically I'm getting rid of this from reply to. That should just automatically be set from my environment variables. So let's just come into here. Let's remove those. These are no longer needed. Resolved reply to, and let's see. Request to reply to. Okay, result from email. It's the default from. Cool. Matter of fact, let's leave it, but let's go here. Copy you. Let's replace that. All right, so default is set there. I actually don't really know why I need a template ID. So let me ask it why. Um, okay, so I was trying to figure out what my template ID and this was what it created. So all it is basically when it communicates to my Postmark API. I don't know how many of y'all have actually used Postmark, but you can create kind of email templates to handle bulk emails and newsletters and all that stuff directly in your Postmark kind of backend. So if I wanted to, I could kind of create a template in my Postmark and then kind of select that as my template ID and alias, and then basically pass text onto that to fill in the gaps, and just kind of utilize the existing kind of templates from Postmark. Otherwise, I can come in here and I can write my HTML directly and it will use that. But if I don't want to do that, it'll use my template ID and alias. I don't really know how it knows to fill in the text. Let me see how. Let me read this. Knows because your app sends a per recipient template model object. All right, so I was trying to figure out what the hell I was doing, but all right, it makes sense now. So, like I said, if I want, I can come here and I can create an entire HTML email from scratch, and we'll use that as kind of the email that's going to be sending with Postmark. Otherwise, I can select an ID or an alias that I define in my Postmark, and then I was trying to figure out how it would know which text to fill in and where. When you create that kind of template on Postmark, which I've actually never done, but I'm assuming this is pretty much how it works across the board for most places, is you're going to create some variables that basically tells it fill in the gap with this text here with these variables, and then you're going to define those variables right here. So you're going to send it these objects. Let's say, for example, first name, key value. It'll look for that key, and it'll fill in your template with those values, and that's basically how you would fill it in, and that's how you would tell the template on Postmark where and what text to kind of fill in the gaps with, which is pretty kind of neat. I don't know if I want to keep it that way or not, or just handle all the templating on my side. I'm not entirely sure how I want to do that yet. I might do it on my side, because if I do it of Postmark's kind of templating, then I would have to kind of hop back and forth and remember and understand which variables I set in those templates and which template it is. And then also, if I ever wanted to kind of change provider, this would basically be kind of a moot point, and it's tying too directly to Postmark for me. And considering I want to make this a strictly kind of UI app, in-app kind of applications of sending kind of bulk newsletter emails, I think I'm going to handle all my templating by myself from the actual app and skip Postmark's templating altogether. But I will probably leave it at least within my schema for now, if I ever decide to actually implement it later. But it's actually kind of unnecessary. It's going to kind of be a pretty big refactor. So basically, I'm going to have to create my own email templates, which I already kind of have, and then use these variables to fill in the gap within those templates. Is pretty much the same way, but doing it from my app. All right, I might do that. Let me see. Um, for example, one of these. I basically use variables for each one of these steps right here. Either I'm going to have to use variables to fill in the gaps for these emails, which kind of limits me, because I don't know, like, for example, if I wanted to create a list, or if I wanted to insert an image somewhere or whatnot, I wouldn't necessarily have full control over that. And with agents, or I can use a package, which editor for me, an HTML editor, kind of lightweight one that would allow me to kind of control how text looks, italics and all that, basically just wrapping different parts of my text in HTML elements, along with like an image insertion or whatnot like that. So I just want to reuse this kind of template already. right, so I think that's what I'm gonna end up doing. I'm probably gonna have to just whip up my own little mini editor that would allow me to kind of style my emails as I'd like. Basically ripping out my templating, rip out that, leave my metadata. All right, let's see. That is one nice thing about agents, is that for something like this, which normally I wouldn't want to have to whip all this up myself, in terms of like building a custom editor and doing all that stuff like that, which can be kind of a headache. You can tell AI to do it, and it does a pretty decent job of it. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. Let me figure out a few more things about this. All right, so I'm gonna rip out the templating because I don't want to tie myself directly to Postmark. Clean this up, clean these buttons up. Then turn this little HTML part into a full-on editor. All right, I think that's the way to do it. All right, I'm gonna leave the metadata because it's just basically collecting more information that I can use later on if I feel like or not. All right, so let's do this. Let's rip out this out. Let's rip this out. All right, so now I just have a subject, my from and reply with my defaults already set, because they shouldn't really be changing very often. But if I do decide at a later date, I can actually come in here and change it. HTML body, which I will turn into a full-on editor, and my text body, which is just an alternative kind of text email being sent for, you know, for email providers that don't render HTML. I can change my message string, but it should pretty much strictly be that for now. I can add tags to this and metadata, which is just strictly for my own purposes later on if I want to add like filtering and whatnot for my campaigns, but I won't do that yet. All right, let's wired up track links, and I really understand how is link tracking currently set up and handled. All right, so link tracking. I do like this optional ability to select specific user IDs, which may later on be like a search functionality to just click and select a user to send it to. But right now, we'll leave it at audience user IDs. Track opens, include unverified emails. So if an email isn't verified, I could include it, because of right now, as you can see, email not verified automatically gets skipped from these newsletters. Same, I can also include banned users, which I haven't wired up yet, but it is in place. I'll probably turn this dry run into a toggle instead of a selector. All right, let's remove that little bit. Items. Let's go justify int. All right, let's figure out how tracking is currently handled. All right, so I'm actually not tracking, I'm just passing it through to Postmark. And campaign metadata is metadata that track links. Okay, so this is just sending it to Postmark as a payload, as a track links payload. So I can go on Postmark and see which links were opened or clicked on, basically. All right, about only. All right, cool. So let's look for. Let's move you here. All right, let's make it a checkbox. Let's go to do up a checkbox, track links, defaulting to and text. All right, I'm gonna tell it to wire this up instead of doing this manually. Wire do up. All right, so basically I'm gonna turn this into a checkbox and then use a kind of 4-column span here for all these checkboxes, turn this into a toggle right here and put it over here. You can see it removed the select and then it wired up my value is going to be default to HTML text, which was right here. It didn't really make sense to be text on HTML only. Let's just track all links and let's keep that. Let's come back here, let's clean this up. Track link, track open, Crash. By default, it's selected. Track opens. Let's add a it's the wrong one. Default checked. All right, so tracking is on by default. Include. All right, a little bit cleaner. And now let's turn this into a toggle and place it here. Where's it? Dry run, dry run. All right, go to do factor the checkbox into a toggle switch, and let's make sure it's the same. All right, using this. Switch component. All right, so I'm gonna have it wire that up as well. So I'm gonna move this from a checkbox into a toggle switch and place it on this line right here. And that will clean up this significantly. So I have a subject matter. I can set a subject, create the text body, can add some internal kind of metadata for myself, add a tag also for myself and for my postmark. I could optionally add audience user IDs, basically people that I'm going to be sending to specifically. And all these are wired up and working appropriately. Tracking links, track opens, include unverified emails, include banned users. And now I have this toggle. Let's come here. Make sure it's the same. Yep. All right. Come here. Now, all right, so I did it appropriately, but let's rip you out here. Let's place you here. Justify between. Let's add a come here. All right, that looks way better. For whatever reason. All right. Cool. So that all works. Now let's make sure this still is appropriate. Let's generate some copy. Get a preview. Turn dry run on. So this should not try to send. Create that campaign. Cool. All right, let's clean this up. Why don't we? Clean this up a little bit more. Let's go to recent campaigns. I think this status, right? Status. Let's go class name. Capitalize that. Just make it a little bit look okay. Now, do the same for campaign details. All right, let's make this a little bit cleaner. So basically, I'm gonna take this response and transform it. I'm gonna remove these underscores, and then I'm gonna capitalize each first letter of the word, and then recombine it. So. Error message, remove the underscores and capitalize each first letter. All right, so it should just create a helper, which typically is somewhere. All right, here's the function. Grab the raw, trim it, replace my underscore, space, and then you're gonna replace that with the space, and then uppercase each first character. All right, so that should look better. All right, newsletter opt out, skipped. All right, clean. So all that works. Last thing I'm going to need to do, which is kind of a big feature, is try to convert this HTML body into an actual editor and use my templates. So before I do that, let's commit all these changes. Okay, looks good. Go ahead and publish this branch, and then here's what I want to do. So basically I want to reuse these templates. Where is it? Welcome. Right here. All right, so for my bulk newsletter emails, I want to reuse these welcome emails as email as the template for my newsletter emails. Can you help implement? All right, so basically I'm going to reuse this welcome email style right here, which is still here. It's going to reuse this email style that's already, existing from other emails to keep things consistent and not to re-enter all the HTML once again. I'm basically going to take this skeleton structure, create a new template for my newsletters, and then use my variables and whatnot to fill in the gaps here. with my editor. All right, so let's do that. So here's this. Get welcome, dead welcome. Where is this? All right, so here's the templates. I think it misunderstood me. All right. Refactor a separate newsletter template using the same HTML setup and styling as. All right, so I thought I literally wanted to reuse those for all my emails. That's not what I want to do. And here's the created a kind of select drop down. All right, so if I come here, let's go to refresh, not even refresh. So basically it's telling me I can just nice. Here's my newsletter template and I can kind of choose one of the templates here, but I need to clean things up. All right, newsletter template, custom body, newsletter default. See what it did. All right, so I created a separate newsletter campaign template based on the existing welcome ones, and it's going to then import that to my email server. Then resolve newsletter template content. All right, cool. So now if I come here and I look at my drop down, I should only have one option, which is newsletter default. Which is correct. And that drop down though. Option select classes. I think I have a select component. I do. All right, so we factor this with Dacians. All right, cool. So I have a template. All right, it's better. So I can actually select that template. And then now I need to add another field to handle all the variables that I need to pass in. Where is it? It's So here's my template. On HTML. All right, so I need variables for this right here. This button, this text right here, this heading title, and maybe a subtitle, and then maybe the image. All right, so let's do this.